This week on The Other Side, the opening of Australia's 48th Parliament.
I lay on the table duly endorsed writs for the election of members of the House of Representatives.
Our most left-wing parliament in half a century, 94 Labor seats in the House and a clear Labor-Green majority in the Senate. What are we in for across the next 3 years? Andrew Cooper, the Executive Director of CPAC Australia, will be our in-studio guest this week to discuss. The Greens in turmoil as three previous leaders clash with the modern extreme left within the party. A welcome to country overload has One Nation literally turning their backs on the ceremony and Pauline Hanson furious. And economist JUDITH SLOAN will join me to discuss the abolition of slavery in history and whether we're voluntarily allowing ourselves to be enslaved by governments today. All that and more this week because it's time you got the other side of the story. G'day Brisbane, g'day Darwin, g'day Australia. This is episode 419 of The Other Side for the week commencing Friday, July 25, 2025. I'm Damian. The Other Side is your deep dive on the important issues that matter in Australia and affect us from around the world from a different, not left-wing perspective. A new show drops every Friday night at 7 p.m. Clips for our Friday night show drop throughout the week, most nights at around 7, so you can watch any way you like. If you like what you see, please do support us. We're a voluntary viewer-supported show. There are now two ways that you can support us financially. One's to go to our website at othersidetv.com.au and sign up to the exclusive side for less than $5 a month. Or you can now subscribe right on YouTube itself, if that's where you watch, by simply pressing the join button beside the subscribe button below. It's that easy. The QR code at the bottom of the screen will also take you to our website if you want to do it that way. Lunacy of lunacies this week as Australia's most embarrassing and absurd political party, the Greens, turned on its own, turfing out the elderly co-founder of the Queensland branch of the party, Drew Hutton. Hutton was expelled from the party after refusing to delete comments on his Facebook page that the party deemed to be transphobic. But get this, the comments weren't comments Mr. Hutton made, they were comments that other people made on his Facebook page. Mr. Hutton has accused the Greens of trying to stifle free speech. Oh, the irony of it all. And get this for antics worthy of George Orwell's Animal Farm. Drew Hutton told the ABC's 7:30 report that the party has been taken over by a cult of queer and transgender people who've infiltrated all the committees and, as a result, it's bleeding talent.
I've been contacted by 40 former members of the Greens. Now, about half of them have been expelled and the other half have been forced out by being subjected to massive complaints. They've weaponised the complaint system. This faction, this cult that I call them, has taken over all the key committees in the party, including the disciplinary committees. So members are hauled before these committees, as I was, and in a bit of a star chamber, they're expelled. Now, a lot of people don't even want to go through that process because it is so distressing and traumatic, so they just leave the party. We've lost some of the best talent, the best conservationists, best environmental campaigners in the party have left because they've been subject to this really bad treatment by this faction of the Greens.
That's former Greens co-founder Drew Hutton speaking on the ABC's 7:30 report this week. The Greens are sounding even more under siege by a small in-crowd than the Liberal Party and more factional than the Labor Party. Former Greens leaders Bob Brown and Christine Milne say they want Mr Hutton's membership restored pronto. Now, I, frankly, couldn't care less. All of these people are responsible for the decline into leftist lunacy in this country in the past 30 years, and they can suffer the consequences of their own idiotic ideology as far as I'm concerned. But unfortunately, we have to care about the people inside the Greens party today because they have enormous power in this new Australian government. As we've explained in previous episodes, Labor massively controls the House of Representatives now, thanks to the brilliant voting of our fellow Australians in May, And there's going to be no checks and balances because Labor and the Greens combined have got a clear majority in the Senate now. They don't need to consult with any minor parties or on the right or any independents or anyone. And this makes the Greens extremely powerful. They'll have to basically sign off on every new law that this Parliament proposes, or it won't be passing. They hold the balance of power. So when three radical leftists like Hutton, Brown and Milne are on the right of the people running the show today in the Greens, well, that tells you all you need to know about how loony left the people who now have control over every law in this country actually are. So hold on to your hats. The opening of the 48th Parliament this week was truly full of brilliance. Labor now has 94 seats in the House of Representatives, a massive majority out of the total seats of 150. And it was terrific to see all the seniority, the life experience, the skill and the talent dealing with the really important stuff on day one. YouTube channel Australians versus the Agenda did a really good job of combining some of the maiden speeches, or as they prefer to call them these days, first speeches of the new Labor MPs. And with the country staring down the barrel of economic ruin and geopolitical insecurity these days, we can all rest comfortably that every one of these new MPs has certainly got their priorities right.
I acknowledge the traditional owners of my electorate, the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation, and pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging, as I do the traditional owners of this place, the Ngunnawal people.
It is the honour of my life to stand in this House as the representative for the electorate of Banks. Banks is located on the lands of the Bidjigal people. I'm so pleased to be able to recognise in this great House their culture, their custodianship of the land, air and waterways of Banks.
I wish to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land this Parliament meets on, the Ngunnawal and Ngambri peoples. I pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging. These lands were never ceded. They hold the wisdom of over 65,000 years of continuous connection to land, water, sky and spirit. This always was and always will be Aboriginal land.
And pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging. They've looked after this country since time immemorial, and it's not lost on me the responsibility that I have to live up to that stewardship.
On the lands of the Ngunnawal and Ngambri people, I acknowledge that this is their country. I also acknowledge the traditional custodians of the many First Nations lands across my home state of Western Australia. How lucky we are to live on the lands of our First Nations people, who so generously share it with us. It always was and always will be Aboriginal land.
I would also like to pay my respects to the traditional owners of the land of my community, the Whadjuk people of the Noongar Nation.
I begin by acknowledging the Ngunnawal and Ngambri people of these lands, and from my home, the Wurundjeri Wurrung people of the Kulin Nation. The simple act of welcome to country is powerful, an act of generosity that invites us to listen, learn and reflect on the stories and wisdom of those who have walked these lands for tens of thousands of years.
I also acknowledge the traditional owners of the land from which I'm visiting, the Yagara and Turrbal people.
I also acknowledge the Gubbi Gubbi people back home in my local community of Queensland.
Are we done yet? Big gold star to all of you. You're all tremendously virtuous humans, and 2 gold stars to the mum with the baby on her hip. You get double virtue signalling points for your very, very brave stance for all parents. Yay. Now, what about the economy? Anyone? And national security? And your understanding of how the world actually works and the gravity of your role as a member of Parliament? Does anyone really think that these people represent our best and our brightest? Obviously, our fellow Australians do because they voted for them. Let's be clear. There's nothing noble or historic or good about the Welcome to Country. It's a straight-up classic neo-Marxist brainwashing technique designed to remind us all every chance the left can get that this is not your country if you can't claim to have descended from the people who just happen to inhabit these lands first. It's the "this is not your country" ceremony, an indoctrination, a propaganda performance piece, a key message repeated, repeated, repeated. This nation we have and inhabit is not country. It's a nation built by people from many lands this past 237 years and defended by their descendants our ancestors with their blood, the ancestors of all of us as one united people, not divided by race or special entitlements. The Welcome to Country is not just a nice thing to do, a nice passing tribute we shouldn't get too upset about. It's an insult, and that's why people get upset about it. It's a slap in the face, a punch in the nose to everyone who cannot claim to have a fraction of Indigenous heritage. It's repeated over and over and over and over to sow division. And that is racism defined. For people who are having none of the performative nonsense of this endless welcome to country charade that has made Australia a laughingstock internationally, were the One Nation senators who rightly called this out for what it is, as Sky News Australia reported.
And pay respects to the elders past and present of all Australia's Indigenous peoples.
I haven't just done it recently, and it wasn't the first time yesterday. I've been doing it for the past 3 years. The other two senators that have now joined me, they are of the same opinion. They have had a gutful of this welcome to Parliament on the parliamentary floor every morning, plus also around the country. And the reaction from the public has been overwhelming. People are actually saying, good on you, you know, you're standing up for us, we're fed up with this, we voted against the Voice, we don't want this, it's overdone.
Overdone very deliberately and very knowingly. Just study the PR techniques of Mao or Goebbels or any other diabolical 20th century authoritarians. This is big state propaganda 101 stuff. Have you stopped falling for it yet? Because Elbow hasn't stopped pushing it.
The Welcome to Country is such a powerful way to begin a new parliament. Like a lot of the most positive things about our nation, we shouldn't take it for granted. This ceremony did not take place until 2007 and was controversial in 2007. It is not controversial today, nor should it be.
Oh, did you get that, guys? It's not controversial. Did you get the memo? Everybody got the memo? Elbow says it's not controversial, so that's it. You shall eat the bugs. You shall do as you're told. Or we'll get the E-Karen onto you immediately. Repeat after me. It is not controversial. Everybody is happy with it all the time, and it's a very respectful thing.
It is a respectful way of us beginning our deliberations here in Canberra, which of course means meeting place. What a Welcome to Country does is holds out like a hand warmly and graciously extended, an opportunity for us to embrace and to show a profound love of home and country.
It's not divisive. It unites us. Can't you feel the unity? Okay, so we've got the race virtue signalling out of the way. That's top of our leaders' agendas, of course, much more important than the economy or our national security, so tick for that one. Now it's time for the second most important thing in their minds, gender virtue signalling.
We're making history. We have the first majority female parliament in our history. And you can see from behind me that Labor has been doing the lion's share of that work. We also have the first majority female cabinet, again in our history, and that means more women are in the cabinet room making decisions that impact on women. Having women in the room matters, and making sure women are representing across the country also does not happen by accident. You have to purposely do it. Yeah.
Because capability and merit don't matter. It's just all about making sure the numbers are up for the sisterhood and the gender balance is right. Of course, the Liberal Party are having none of this. Oh, wait. Here's a social media post from opposition leader Susan Lee from the first day in Parliament with the caption reading, "It's my first question time as opposition leader and my experienced team is ready." I guess the men are just for keeping in the back rooms these days, are they? Just who produces this awful PR garbage for the Liberal Party? It's so shallow and obvious and try hard. Yes, very good, Susan. No men in sight. We get it. Terrific. Very woke. 10 out of 10 virtue signal points for you too. Playing the left's games on the left's turf. That is not the way to guarantee success. How about changing the turf? Take advantage of the fact that the left-wing parties are simply obsessed with identity politics and make them justify their lunacy. How about you play on the turf of the economy and jobs and security, and God forbid your party's core values of supporting small business and liberty, the things that actually matter to Australians, really. How about you start leading and stop following? As a good friend of this show always says, the left are gonna left. You expect this garbage from the marshmallow brain people in Labor and the Greens. But the scariest thing about our country right now is that we don't have a strong opposition. And yes, I realise the Marxists have got their identity politics tentacles so deeply into our culture, our education, our media and our bureaucracy, both government and corporate bureaucracy. I realise it's going to be a long, hard road ahead for the Liberal Party. But when the only other option is extinction, you think they'd at least have a crack at putting up a fight. In other news this week, we lost a couple of real characters in the entertainment world with the passing of the men who brought us Hulk Hogan and Ozzy Osbourne. The Aussie biosecurity restrictions on US beef are being lifted. The reality is that Australia does use biosecurity as leverage and a kind of non-tariff tariff. And that's exactly the thing that Donald Trump's trying to prevent, so his tariff policy seems to be working for America. In any case, I wouldn't get too worried about this story, despite the media focus on it. Cattle Australia, which represents more than 52,000 grass-fed beef producers, says that Australia is unlikely to see a lot of US beef coming in as a result because we can produce beef a lot more cheaply here. So it's not a high-value market for the Yanks to want to export to. It'll also help keep Australia at the lower end of Trump's tariffs overall, and it'll help our beef exports to the United States more specifically. One story we should keep our eye on in America, which we don't have a lot of time to focus on this week, but I want to speak more about in the coming weeks, is the investigation by Tulsi Gabbard as Director of National Intelligence into the role that the former President Barack Obama and others played in deliberately perpetuating the myth that there was some kind of collusion between the Trump administration and Russia that enhanced Russia's meddling in the US elections. The mainstream media in the US are doing everything they can to downplay this because they bought into the myth and fell for it. But we shouldn't fall for the easy dismissals of this story as some kind of Trump attempt to take the focus off other things like the Epstein files. These claims about Obama and his team are serious, and they're backed by a lot of evidence from Tulsi Gabbard. So keep an eye on it, despite the attempts at dismissal. We'll be exploring it in future episodes. If you like The Other Side, one of the best ways you can support us is by signing up for the products of our sponsors. And one of our best sponsors is PIA VPN, the virtual private network that stops people spying on your internet activity. It'll keep you and your family truly safe from the prying eyes of big governments and corporations without slowing down your internet speeds. And you can watch Netflix or other streaming services using your regular accounts with them as if you're viewing from any country in the world. You can sign up for less than $3 a month and get a whopping 83% off the normal price. Just go to piavpn.com/otherside to sign up and you'll get the discount. And you'll get more info on those special deals if you check it out. That's piavpn.com/otherside. The Australian Liberal Party's whole let's swing left and out-woke the Labor Party strategy that they've decided to embrace since their disastrous election performance seems to be working really well. Not. The latest Australian news poll, the first since the May election, shows that support for the Liberal National Coalition is now at its lowest point in 40 years. And 1/3 of the country doesn't want to vote for either major party. The primary vote for both the major parties is at its lowest point ever. 35% of voters want an alternative, and that's without there being a really good, viable alternative on the right side of politics. Although One Nation is looking better by the day, I've got to say. The coalition is at less than 30%. Remember, that's made up of two political parties, the Liberals and the Nationals, both of whom seem to be in crisis denial, acting as if they're still strong parties with no existential threat. They're not. They're deep in trouble and at risk of disappearing off the map for good. And they need to wake up. Labor is on a pathetic 36%, hardly a mandate for government, despite our weird electoral system meaning they ended up with a massive majority of 94 seats in the House of the 150 available. Please remember that, Albo, Wong and Chalmers. 2/3 of Aussies did not vote for you, so tread softly in the next few years, please. The Greens are still on 12%. The stupidity of that segment of the voting public just absolutely astounds me and beggars belief, frankly. One Nation is on 8%, which means if they would simply get their grassroots and branches game going to support the now very strong performance of Pauline at the helm, they could become a very powerful Conservative force in this country. And I reckon they could consolidate a lot of that 15% there in the others area, the grey bit, pretty easily. Joining me now in the Other Side studio to discuss all of this is the founder and executive director of CPAC Australia, Andrew Cooper. Andrew, welcome back to the Other Side. Good to see you.
Yeah, thank you, Damian. Good to be here.
Just before we get into it, CPAC is the Conservative Political Action Conference.
Yes.
You are the Australian arm of that. It's originally a US organisation.
Yeah, no, it is. We've taken the brand from the US with their permission, but it's an Australian-controlled entity. It's a non-profit organisation. My co-director is Warren Mundine, a good friend of the show and a good friend of every Australian.
Yep.
And one of our original speakers and long-term speaker is Jacinta Price. So I think obviously we leaned into the voice campaign. It's interesting, with your earlier segments, how the Labor Party aren't listening at all. And this is one of the topics that we'll have, on display at the CPAC conference in September.
Okay. And so it is coming up in September. It's in Brisbane this year.
It is in Brisbane, yeah, at the New Star Casino. So should be good. We'll have well over 1,000 people there. International guests from UK, US, Japan and others.
Okay.
So should be fun.
All right. People can get tickets. The website will be on the screen. If it's not on the screen already, it'll be on the screen in a moment. Just having a look at some of this stuff that's going on at the moment. I mean, the opening of Parliament, One Nation, this news poll. I mean, what is the state of Conservative politics in Australia right now post-election? It's pretty depressing.
It's very depressing. I mean, I've been depressed about the state of Conservative politics since Albanese called the election earlier in the year. And one thing I thought we could rely on with Peter Dutton was a stoic kind of resolve to stand by his values regardless. And I don't know who got in his ear or, how that campaign came to the conclusion that Peter going missing was a good thing. But I think
is that how you read it? Like they played it. I mean, people say that in January it sort of turned. They were doing great. They were fine. He was being very strong, and then somebody got in his ear and said, "Oh, you need to soften it now so we keep the inner city seats. We keep the sort of wet Liberals happy."
Yeah.
And he toned it down and pulled back.
Yeah.
And
so he was convinced to tone it down. Yeah. Exactly. And they follow the polling.
Sorry, just you were saying that he actually went missing, meaning you feel like they told him to.
Yeah, for example, the nuclear policy, right? It just wasn't mentioned.
Yeah.
I mean, it should have been. It's a great policy. I mean, it's a nonsense. We don't have the capacity for, business people, entrepreneurial organisations to consider nuclear as a contribution to the energy mix. It was a great policy. It also, in my opinion, successfully turned the so-called net zero argument on its head in that the only way we're ever going to get to so-called net zero is through a clean energy like nuclear, because the rest of it doesn't work. So I think they had a great opportunity to wedge the opposition, the government with that, but they just went missing on it. And my understanding is that the polling all said that the $600 billion, number that was presented by the left or the Labor Party as being the cost of doing a nuclear. It was a nonsense number, but they never addressed it. No. It scared off voters and they never didn't attack it. And
they gave up the fight and decided to not. And then the working from home thing, and he did the backflip on that. And
once he backflipped on that, he was done.
Yeah, and that was, I think we played it a number of times on the show, that clip from the Today Show when he was interviewed by Sarah Arvo, and she was rousing on him like a little schoolboy.
Yeah.
It was really a archetypal sort of metaphor for where we're at in Australia now.
Exactly. And
very strong young women controlling the narrative now.
Yeah, and so now we've had the evidence of how that lack of articulation of where we stand on not only the policy but on the values of the Conservatives and play out. We've seen the results of that. We haven't just seen it in the last federal election. We've seen it in numerous elections across the country, state and federal. And now we're installed a leader that I think is really going to struggle to articulate any sort of value set throughout her term. So however long
it's
that may
a clear
be.
decision of the Liberal Party to say, okay, we don't recognise that the problem was that we made Peter become softer,
Yeah.
and we made him look like he didn't have a leg to stand on because he was flip-flopping all over the place because he was trying to appease two different market segments that don't really view the world the same way.
Yeah.
And they've said, no, it wasn't that. That wasn't the problem. The problem was we weren't left-wing enough.
Yeah.
I can't understand this swing, and I've said it on the show before, to the left, because the market share's on the other side. There's 12% or more sitting there waiting to be taken on the right side of the Liberal Party, and they're going further left, thinking that that's where the problem is. That's my view. I don't want to impact on what I want to hear what yours is. But do you think, what's your take on that? Do you think the party is salvageable?
Well, there's only two parties that can win government. So my view is that we must salvage the Liberal Party.
Right.
It has to be salvaged.
Yes.
Right. And so the question is, well, how do you do that? And I've never been a member of the LNP in Queensland or the Liberal Party in Australia. I've never really been a member of any party, except the Liberal Democrats for a short period some years ago. But I am of the view that the people must take back control of that party. The members that are in the party must gain a voice. And it's hard because the average age, let's take Queensland for example, the average age of the LNP in Queensland is 70 years of age. Right.
Well, that's nuts. I mean, younger Conservatives have got to step up. They've got to, I mean, I would say younger. I just mean younger than 70, right? I mean, if you're over 40, it's fine. Just get into the party, join the party.
Get in the party.
Start going to those branch meetings.
So what's the purpose of being a member, right? So I asked this to people. What's the purpose of being a member of a party? And the response is, well, I want to support them. Well, you can support them. Just vote for them. You don't need to be a member. Well, I want to give them a little bit of money. That's okay. You can donate to them. You don't need to be a member. The sole purpose of being a member is to give your voice into the party about the direction of the party. And I think that's failing. And it's not because, and it's not an accident, right? There's 100 and something people waiting to get into the party in the Liberal, in the LNP in Queensland. It's the same in New South Wales and the same in a couple of the other states, particularly Victoria. They're holding back members joining because they're the wrong members.
Oh, yeah.
The people, the cadre.
It seems to be captured by a small elite group.
It has.
From the left-leaning side of the party.
Now, if that's the only...
Careerists, maybe not left.
Well, they are, but you know, the administrative side is collaborating with certain power brokers within the political side. But the thing is, if the Liberal Party is the only alternative to the Labor Green left, then this can't stand. We've got to take back that party. The people have got to take the Liberal Party back because at the moment they're just on a trajectory to either, you know, to a long extinction, which will be terrible for the country because that means we're not going to have anyone in government for probably decades, or we, you know, mobilise the forces and take the party back and make it stand for something. And then once you stand for something, people then have got a point of difference. They've got a choice. At the moment, there's no. What is the choice, Damian? There's no choice.
No. All right. Labor's extended its two-party preferred lead over the coalition. It was roughly 55-45 at election time. Now it's at 57-43. Andrew, does this mean that the voters have abandoned the centre-right completely, that the reality is that Australia itself has become a leftist country, do you think? And that's the course we're on, and we old straight white guys just need to suck it up?
I think that's where we're trending. There's no doubt about it. And part of the problem is there's no strong narrative about why this is a bad thing. Once you've got both parties agreeing that say quotas, for example, for marginalised groups is a good thing, once you've got both of those, then that argument's done. So that's another shift. That's another stepping stone towards the left. What we need is Conservatives to stand up on a values base and argue why some of the things, why budget deficits are a bad thing, why carrying huge amounts of debt are a risky thing for the country.
Yeah,
it's a bad thing. Do we hear that narrative? We don't hear it.
No, we hear about gender and we hear about race.
That's right.
Yeah, look, I think it's got to change. And you're right, it's only going to change by people getting inside the party, and it has to be that main
That's
party,
my view.
right? And if you want to join One Nation, great. I mean, you can do it there. We might get a Nigel Farage effect where he ends up changing the Conservative Party from the outside by driving reform. We might see the same thing happen here where One Nation or another minor party, Jared Rennick or the Libertarians or something, but One Nation seems to be the dominant one now, will be able to kind of drive the Liberal Party back to its core base by taking a lot of its...
Yeah, look, and I congratulate Pauline, what she's done, and, I think everyone admires her now. And particularly since they've got an extra couple of senators, that their vote level, they deserve those 4 senators. So I think that's a good result. And I can see that their representation, particularly in the upper house, will expand going forward. But, I just don't see One Nation anytime soon achieving government.
No.
I still believe the Liberal Party is the only in coalition with the Nats, and the Nats are not the problem.
Yeah.
It's the Liberal Party that is the problem. And I just think we need to fix it. And it's not, I've tried to join the party. I tried to join the party in January. I'm still waiting 7 months later.
No, they're deliberately.
They won't talk to me. They won't. So it's hard to join that party.
Well, you're a bit high profile, but there are plenty of people watching this show that could go out and join tomorrow. They wouldn't even know, under the radar, or shouldn't be. Isn't it ridiculous that if you're a Conservative,
and when you can't
join the Conservative Party?
That's right. And then you get a say in your pre-selections. You get a say in how the parties run. That's the only way that's going to be fixed.
And these days, you don't even have to be a Conservative. I mean, there's a lack of centre-right, classical Liberals in the party as well.
Yeah.
All right. I just want to point out there's this quote from the Australian, John, if we can put it on the screen. I think it's an important quote. It's also 11 points down on the Coalition's recent peak of 40% just 8 months ago, when the Albanese government was considered to be heading towards a potential election defeat. So where they are now at 29% is 11 points down, percentage points down on their peak of 40% when it looked like Dutton was going to win. So that says something, I think. We've got to take a break, but we'll be coming back in a moment. Don't forget, CPAC is coming up in September. You can grab your tickets. We've got the details on the screen there. We'll be back in a second with Andrew Cooper.
You're watching The Other Side with Damian Coorey, Australia's best independent news commentary show, bringing you up to speed on the issues that matter most. Simply subscribe for free on YouTube by hitting the subscribe button and bell, so you'll be notified whenever we post anything. And to really stay in touch, check out our independent website at othersidetv.com.au. You can sign up for free there too, or join the exclusive side and help support our show for less than $5 a month. This is The Other Side.
Pauline Hanson's One Nation Party recorded a 6.4% share of the national primary vote in the 2025 Australian federal election. But in the latest news poll from The Australian, the first one since the election, One Nation's share of the vote has jumped to 8%. That's an increase of 25% in primary votes. They're on a roll, capturing the disaffected Conservatives and classical Liberals turned off by the Liberal National Coalition's lurch to the left. It's safe to say that they're probably now bigger than the National Party, which scored 3.8% of the vote in the election, plus whatever share of the Queensland LNP and Northern Territory CLP votes might have been theirs if they weren't in unified parties in those areas. As we mentioned earlier in this week's show, the party's 4 senators, One Nation's 4 senators now, made this protest at the opening of the 48th Parliament this week.
And pay respects to the elders past and present of all Australia's Indigenous peoples.
Joined in the studio this week by the founder and executive director of the Conservative Political Action Conference, CPAC Australia, Andrew Cooper. Andrew, lots of Australians are really getting tired of this performative thing, this welcome to country being, even those who support it in principle say it's overdone, right? What are your thoughts on it?
Well, I agree. I mean, 60% of Australians voted against this sort of nonsense, during the Voice referendum. And but the left are still trying to use this made-up welcome to country, created for political purposes, 20-odd years ago, or 18 years ago, and they're still trying to jam it down our throats. And, my chairman, Warren Mundine, CPAC Australia chairman, obviously he led the charge against this nonsense. As an Aboriginal man, he calls it nonsense. he gets upset about it.
It has a ceremonial value, I think, that might be okay if you're doing an Indigenous event.
I think if it's
or
genuine,
something. Yeah,
if it's a genuine, heartfelt welcome, but it's not. This is political performance art, as you said.
Yeah, it's propaganda. It's classic left-wing propaganda where they just repeat the message over.
And it's
the subtle message is it's not your country.
And it's designed to rub ordinary Australians' noses in it.
Yeah.
Right? It's designed to say, you're not good enough to be here in this country. You are second class because you weren't here first. And those that are doing the virtual signalling in Parliament there, which is just incredible, they're saying, well, I'm better than you because at least I'll acknowledge this. Okay, and this sort of attempt at division, I think, is just so typical of the Labor Party, who are, as you know, as much as we think the Liberal Party is lurching to the left, the Labor Party are going hard left now, and this is a incredible danger to the country, in my opinion.
Well, a lot of people don't realise in that 94 seats they've got now, it's much further to the left factions. And so, you know, it's probably the most left-wing government that we've ever had, if not certainly the most left since Whitlam. Look, I think the thing about the Welcome to Country is people are missing the subtleties of it, right? It's not your country message that's embedded in it, but also it's a slap in the face. It's kind of like, we're going to say this thing, you're going to get a visceral reaction to this. That doesn't feel right. You know, it feels like you're setting up and then it's, I better not feel that way because I might be a racist.
Yeah.
You know, I should be embracing this. It's a really manipulative, classic Marxist thing.
Yeah.
Sky News commentator Chris Kenny actually is someone who sort of supports it. And he had Pauline Hanson on for a Please Explain this week and challenged her on it. Have a look at this.
You seem to be turning your back on Indigenous people or those people that want to recognise Indigenous culture. And look, I agree with you. A lot of this stuff is overdone. And of course, there are Indigenous activists who overclaim. But just to open the Parliament and recognise that there were traditional owners of this land and recognise that that is where we are meeting in the Parliament, how is that not just polite and inclusive and a general recognition of our country's shared history?
Chris, this is not about the opening of Parliament. This happens every morning that Parliament is sitting. So that's just not the opening of Parliament. If it's just the opening of Parliament, I will accept that. But it's not just the opening of Parliament.
I got a lot of respect for Chris Kenny, but I'm not with him on this one. It's just, yeah, he's saying things that you hear like, you know, oh, it's just polite, it's just inclusive, it's just a general recognition of our shared history. No, I think he's missing the point. It's classic manipulative left-wing propaganda. They know exactly what they're doing.
Yeah, they know exactly what they're doing, and Pauline knows exactly what they're doing, and Chris has somehow missed the message there. And this is why we've invited Pauline to speak at CPAC and not Chris.
Right. Well, both of them would be great.
Well, Sky News is covering CPAC live.
Yep.
And we do have some of, but I think Chris has just pushed in. He pushed in on The Voice, and I think he's just having a hard time accepting that he's in the minority here. People don't agree with him, and look, he's a fantastic addition, I think.
Well, Pauline certainly put him in his place. He was on absolutely fine. Let's have a look at the second clip.
But I'm saying I'm fed up with putting up with it as well. So, you know, it's not being disrespectful. I'm not talking my back on Australians. I'm turning my back on these policies and ideologies that are dividing our nation and the tokenism that's going on. It's about time. I've been speaking about this for the last 30 years.
You have indeed.
The state of this country, it's in one hell of a bloody mess. I'm not pulling a stunt. I'm sticking to my values and my principles and what I believe in. I want to see a united country as one nation, not this division that's happening. And these people are pushing their own agenda. The activists, which we see with Lydia Thorpe on the floor of Parliament, have no bloody respect for any of our system, but she is there. So I'm standing up for what I believe in. I am Australian. I welcome people that are born here and people who actually come from overseas to migrate here. I welcome everyone that have a right to this land. Do not acknowledge people that because they're traditional owners.
Well, I think it's
was introduced by Ernie Dingo in 1970 in the 1970s. It is not a custom of the Aboriginal people. That's rubbish.
But it's a nice idea and it's inclusive. I believe it's sad that you're doing that.
Yeah, it's not a nice idea or inclusive, mate. It's divisive and it's a deliberately diabolical trick, propaganda trick.
And like just listening to that clip, Damian, isn't it wonderful to hear the authenticity in Pauline's voice?
Yeah.
Something we don't hear from politicians. You know, we hear it when Jacinta was on the campaign trail through the referendum. We heard it from her. And we hear it from Pauline, but it's such a rare thing, isn't it? This is why people are warming to Pauline and One Nation,
and to people like Jacinta Price.
And
like
she
has
people
so much respect.
She does.
I think the issue, I mean, I always say Susan Ley sounds like the HR lady. coming out to tell us that we're going to have a nice review and we're all going to
Yeah.
sit down and sing Kumbaya. No, we've got some real issues going on in this country.
Yeah,
we need to get fired up about them.
When you believe in something passionately, and when you're put into a corner like Pauline, like Chris was trying to do with Pauline there, your instinct is to come out and argue passionately, right? And you can't fake those moments. And unfortunately, with too many politicians, when they're pushed into a corner, and we see it on TV all the time, we saw it with Peter. We see it with others. They get pushed into a corner, and they've got to come up with a response. They're trying to remember their talking points, right? And you just see them. They freeze.
Yeah.
And I think authenticity is such an underrated attribute of a politician, because that's where you get your connection, And if you're not authentic, we see through it. We don't even know why we see through it, the bullshit, right?
Oh, yeah.
But you see through it, the non-verbals, the body language.
Oh, there's psychology and neuroscience behind all this.
Yeah.
The authenticity thing is big.
And you may not
fake it, which is good.
That's right. And you may not agree with what Pauline says. You may or may not. But the point is, she's telling her truth.
Well, it's known that people will vote for people they don't agree with if they think they know where they stand on things. But if you feel like you don't know where someone stands on something, if they're going to be flip-floppers, that's why Peter Dutton lost. Because after January, he started to be a flip-flopper. Then it started to go down because they told him to not be so strong on things. Of course, he then loses, right? Because you know that the Labor people, at least I don't agree with the thing they say, but they believe it.
Yeah.
They believe in it.
Absolutely.
Mate, great to talk to you. Thanks a lot for coming in. And CPAC is happening
20th, 21 of September. Okay. Tickets on the website, cpac.network.
In Brisbane this year at the brand new Star Casino in the Queen's Wharf development, which is quite nice. You want to come up and see the Olympic City or down or over or wherever you're coming from. It's worth checking out the new facilities and
it's a great addition. Let's hope they can make some money. We're making a contribution, so
absolutely.
All right, hope to see everyone there.
Yep, and the tickets are on your website, which is
cpac.network.
cpac.network. That's it. No .com, no .au.
That'll do. That'll get you there.
Network. All right. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, Damian.
Did you know that with a virtual private network or VPN on your computer, tablet, or phone, you can log into your favorite streaming services like Netflix from home with an internet address from anywhere in the world and watch all the shows that they offer in other countries, including stuff in different languages? And using a VPN to route all your internet traffic through a third-party server means that big corporations and big government can't spy on you. If you sign up now with private internet access, we think they're the best VPN servers out there. As a viewer of The Other Side, you can get 83% off the price of your subscription and get online for less than $3 a month. Check it out right now. Go to piavpn.com/otherside. That's piavpn.com/otherside. It's a great service, a rock bottom price, and supporting our sponsor, you are helping to keep The Other Side going and growing. We really need your support here at The Other Side to keep on going and growing and moving into 2026 as we start planning for next year. If you like the show, you want to support us, please donate. You can do that now a brand new way. You can press the join button beside the subscribe button if you watch on YouTube. It's right down below. It's that easy. The QR code at the bottom of the screen also will take you to our website. If you'd like to support us directly, you can do that on our website and we get all the money. YouTube doesn't take a cut, but it's totally your call. The new way to support us, click that join button right here on YouTube, or if you prefer, go to our website, othersidetv.com.au. Freedom and liberty are very important, but we seem to take them for granted in Australia and the West these days, preferring to criticise our own culture rather than celebrate it. Economist JUDITH SLOAN will join me in a moment to discuss that. People fought hard for liberty throughout history. Next Friday marks 191 years since the abolition of slavery laws came into effect across the British Empire. On August 1st each year, Emancipation Day is observed in many parts of the world to celebrate those laws that ended centuries of brutal slavery for hundreds of thousands of Africans and their descendants. Though it didn't bring immediate freedom to all, it was a critical step towards justice and the recognition of human dignity. The day is celebrated in Canada, Jamaica and Barbados, among other places, and more recently, the think tank, the Australian Institute of Progress, has been marking the day here in Australia with an annual event in Brisbane. Why? Well, because it's important to remember the good things that Western civilization and Christianity achieved throughout history, since both get a bad rap in so many levels these days. It's easy to be biased in our thinking and criticise our cultural roots, but it can be very damaging and downright destructive to our civilization and social fabric if that's all we do and all that we teach our kids. In the early 1830s, slavery was widespread across the British Empire's colonies, despite a ban in 1807 on the slave trade. That ban prohibited importing enslaved Africans to Britain, but it didn't do anything to liberate those already in bondage. But pressure from abolitionists like William Wilberforce, Thomas Clarkson and Thomas Buxton convinced Parliament in the UK to pass the 1833 Slavery Abolition Act.
But in order to do this, abolitionists would have to overcome numerous hurdles. Even with public opinion on their side, they still faced a fierce pro-slavery lobby in Parliament, the West India interest, determined to uphold an institution they were so heavily invested in, and that still benefited Britain financially.
That's from the History Hit channel on YouTube, which is well worth checking out. While Britain was far from perfect in its historical behaviour, and there were voices in the country opposed to abolition right up to the end, it can't be dismissed lightly that the enlightenment of thinking in the liberal democratic West had a massive impact on the success of the abolitionists eventually. Also, you could be the world's biggest atheist and it'd be hard to deny the impact that Christianity had on abolition too. Abolitionists like William Wilberforce, Thomas Clarkson, Hannah More and others were motivated by their evangelical Anglican faith. They saw slavery as a profound sin, and they believed it violated the fundamental Christian belief that all people are created equal in the eyes of God. Religious groups like the Quakers were among the first and most consistent voices against slavery, both in Britain and America too. In the early 1830s, while the British Empire was moving towards abolition, slavery remained entrenched in many other parts of the world. In the United States, slavery was not only legal, but sadly expanding. The US didn't start dismantling slavery until the Civil War, 3 decades later. But it was Brazil which had the largest population of enslaved people in the Americas. Slavery wasn't abolished there until 1888. Meanwhile, the massive Arab slave trade was still going on, and in Africa, some kingdoms were deeply involved in the slave trade, both for export and domestically. As we said, next Friday, August 1, marks the anniversary of the Abolition of Slavery Act in the British Parliament. And if you are in southeast Queensland, the Australian Institute for Progress is hosting a breakfast in Brisbane that you can find out all about by visiting their website at aip.asn.au. And as a viewer of The Other Side, you can get a $10 discount off the ticket price if you are in the Brizzy area by using the code TOS for The Other Side. The breakfast will be great because the guest speaker is none other than economist and contributing economics editor for the Australian newspaper, JUDITH SLOAN. And JUDITH joins us now. Welcome, JUDITH. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks very much for having me, Damian.
Our focus on the abominable things in our history sometimes means that we miss the things that truly make Western civilization great. If we take those things for granted and we don't truly value them and teach them to our kids, we can really end up in trouble, I guess, can't we?
You know, people fought hard for what was really universal human rights, the abolition of slavery, and yet in democratic countries, and I'm just focusing here on democratic countries, but I guess because people understand that in totalitarian communist regimes, that individual liberty is necessarily severely curtailed. But we're talking about democratically elected governments who essentially seek to tell people how to live their lives and to restrict how people live their lives and to make choices for them. And my talk is going to go through some of those examples because I think it's apart from it essentially being in many ways very undemocratic, what it does is it removes the agency of people. And when you start to remove the agency of people, they end up becoming, I think, often quite dependent because the decisions are being made for them rather than them making their own decisions.
Yeah. I mean, this is sort of behavioural economic stuff, isn't it? I mean, we're looking at the psychology and the impact of different economic decisions or different policy decisions on people's behaviour. And it really does have an effect. It's something that we probably don't talk enough about in relation to a lot of things in Australia around welfare and I guess, some of the different approaches that we have. And our biggest problem at the moment, Judith, economically, of course, that's really not going to, it's the cause or root cause, I guess, underlying a lot of the other issues that we've got, is productivity, low productivity. Without high productivity, we can't have higher wages. Otherwise we wind up with inflation, and then we don't get interest rates down. It's a vicious circle.
Oh, well, that's what economists do. It's not called the dismal science for nothing. But look, there was a really interesting paper that came out this week by the Centre for Independent Studies by my friend Robert Carling, and he has demonstrated that more than 50% of the Australian population earn their principal income, their main source of income, from the government. Right?
Yeah.
Now, you think that through, that one tends to be beholden to the paymaster, doesn't it? So, essentially what happens in that situation is that people, perhaps reluctantly, but not even always reluctantly, will accept the commandments and restrictions and the like because their main source of income is the government.
Yeah, that shocked me, that statistic, I've got to say. I mean, it's a terrifying thought. I'll just underscore it for people. 50% of people in Australia are dependent, who are working and have an income, are dependent, or not working, but are dependent on their income, for their income on the government. Is that sustainable anyway? I mean, what's the historical and global evidence around that? I mean, is it something that we should be immediately saying this is just a real crisis?
Well, I think, I'm very influenced by an economist, and some of your listeners may know him, Thomas Sowell, and he talks about the anointed. So the anointed elite, they have these sort of grand experiments. So they want to save the planet. They want to, protect workers. They want to protect citizens. They want to, eliminate poverty, for example. That was a one. And what they don't understand is that that's not how the world works. The world works on the basis of millions and millions of little decisions by ordinary folk, and they therefore don't see the trade-offs. So if you think of the war on poverty, for example, which was waged in America for many, many years, I mean, the incidence of poverty didn't actually fall. But the anointed are kind of doing it to make themselves feel good, and they press on.
Rationales for restriction of freedom include things like public health, climate change, education, employment. They're keeping us safe. They're doing it for our benefit.
The labour market.
Yeah. And in some instances, it even amounts to something close to bribery. No school or work for you if you don't comply, right?
Of course. Well, of course, it was a sort of depressing nadir really during COVID. So, the sort of playbook seemed to be allow the public health officials to create panic. And having created panic, then we imposed these rafts of restrictions, most of which, as it turned out, as you know, Damian, were not based on anything really. They were just made up. I think of my normal hometown, home city of Melbourne, where we had a curfew, we had bans on playgrounds. And it's only come out several years later that was all just made up.
Well, we're locked in your homes for 250 something days, wasn't it, for a year? I mean, it's just extraordinary, that level of restriction.
I think initially people went along with it, but then people only went along with it after a while because there were penalties. So
this is my concern, though, Judith. They did well. I don't know. I mean, I wonder sometimes because, they went along with it, and then they had the opportunity, both in Victoria and in Queensland, to oust the governments responsible. And in both cases, they re-elected the governments responsible. So my concern is, is there something wrong with us culturally?
I think that certainly the Andrews government were able to manipulate the media presentation of this incredibly well. And so people basically fell for it. It was really, in many ways, an exercise in unbridled power as much as anything else. And, I mean, yes, there were people who tried to rebel, but the consequences of doing that, I mean, I feel very sad about the vaccine mandates. When did we lose the perspective that people must have the right to choose whether or not to accept something being injected into their body.
Oh, it was extraordinary how quickly, yeah.
Again, it was based on misinformation. I mean, the vaccines never halted the transmission across the population. So I feel very sad for those people who lost out because they legitimately refused the vaccine or were hurt by the vaccine.
Judith, stay with us. We want to come back and chat to you a little bit more after the break. We're just going to take a quick break, but don't forget, if you do want to see Judith speaking at that breakfast in Brisbane, if you are in the Brisbane area on August 1 next Friday, get along to that. You can get a $10 discount if you use the code TOS when you buy your ticket. You can click on the QR code on the screen now, and if you're a viewer of the other side, you do get $10 off that. Or you can just go to aip.asn.au, aip.asn.au. We'll be back in a moment with Economist Judith Sloan.
The Other Side with Damian Coury is Australia's best independent news commentary show, bringing you up to speed and diving deep on the issues that matter most in around an hour. So you don't miss a thing. Subscribe now to our YouTube channel at Other Side Oz by clicking the button and the bell below the picture frame. And follow us on X now at Other Side Oz. That's AUS at Other Side Oz. It's free. This is The Other Side.
Economist Judith Sloan will be back with us in a moment as we discuss the real economic impact of our loss of freedoms in Australian society these days. Freedom isn't free, as they say. For over 400 years, the transatlantic slave trade was one of the darkest chapters in human history. From the 1400s to the 1800s, more than 12 million African men, women and children were forcibly taken from their homelands and shipped across the Atlantic in brutal, inhumane conditions. Millions did not even survive the journey, and those who did were sold into lifelong slavery in the Americas, particularly in Brazil, the Caribbean and the south of the now United States. Far less talked about, though equally devastating, was the Arab slave trade, which spanned more than 1,300 years from the 7th to the 20th centuries, in which 17 million people from sub-Saharan Africa and Europe, yes, white people, were captured and trafficked through North Africa and the Middle East. Enslaved men were often used as soldiers or labourers. Women and children were taken into domestic servitude or forced into sexual slavery as concubines in royal courts and wealthy households. There's simply no denying the fact that the enlightened nature of modern Western liberal democracies and the ethics of Christianity both had a lot to do with why slavery was abolished in the early 1800s. You could be the biggest Marxist or atheist walking the planet, and you've just got to accept it, I'm afraid. It was Britain that led the world in the abolition of slavery, and it was largely Christian evangelicals that drove the abolitionist movement against huge opposition from segments of the establishment. It's probably no surprise then that if you look at where modern slavery is at, its absolute worst today, it's in places like North Korea, Saudi Arabia, the UAE, hooray Dubai and Abu Dhabi, Russia, India, China and Iran, according to the Global Slavery Index. This week marks the 191st anniversary of Emancipation Day, August the 1st, the day that the Abolition of Slavery Act came into force exactly 1 year after it passed the British Parliament. If you're in southeast Queensland, the Australian Institute for Progress is hosting a breakfast in Brisbane. You can find out all about by visiting their website at aip.asn.au. And as a viewer of The Other Side, you can get a $10 discount off the ticket price by using the code TOS for The Other Side. And you can click on the QR code on the screen right now to take you straight to that site. The guest speaker at that breakfast will be the economist and contributing economics editor for the Australian newspaper, Judith Sloan. And Judith is with us on the other side right now. Judith, you're going to be talking about the real economic impact, I guess, of a lack of liberty or a loss of liberty, whether it's the slave trade, whether it's people sort of voluntarily enslaving themselves to government, as we seem to be seeing a bit too much of these days. Just tell us a little bit about your thesis around that and the impact on labour and economics.
It's a tricky issue in a way because, I mean, no one wants to downplay the total loss of liberty associated with slavery. Now, that is at one end of the extreme, and it obviously is absolutely abhorrent. But I'm particularly, I was sort of by profession a labour market economist, so I've thought about this a lot. So, I mean, it goes back a long time, including in Australia, where there was a view that the state had to intervene because there's this essential imbalance between workers and the bosses, right? So hence we had early on in 1906, the Harvester Judgment, which ushered in the minimum wage. And over time, there have really basically been more and more restrictions on how the labour market can operate. Now, there was a short period of time where you might call a deregulation, a kind of freedom, what I call the freedom of contract. But it turns out that actually that was quite a short period of time. It was ushered in by Paul Keating in the early 1990s. It arguably culminated with work choices, which was seen as a political disaster, but probably from an economic point of view was a good thing. And it's now been, I think, a reimposition of those restrictions. So, I mean, it's kind of ironic to think we've got like unemployment just over 4%, and many, many businesses are very short of suitable workers. So the idea that this is a completely lopsided arrangement where the bosses have all the power and the workers don't have any power, it's not right.
We're in a completely different environment nowadays to that sort of historical mindset, which is probably why, the labour movement shifted to identity politics. It's kind of lost its way a little bit in terms of its purpose. It doesn't have that need anymore because labour environment is pretty healthy. So we are probably in a position, would you say, that it's the employers and business that needs a little bit of looking after for a while? Because I certainly hear it a lot from small business people that they're just not hiring. They can't be bothered hiring. It's too hard.
Sure. Well, it comes back to this, the freedom for people to offer terms and conditions that they might deem to be acceptable to their workers, and the workers to decide whether those terms and conditions are acceptable. But in fact, that's not how our legislative restrictions work, So, for example, if someone wanted to be an independent contractor as opposed to an employee, they'd find that their right to choose that is very, very limited, because the law will state that here are the conditions in which you're an employee and that's what you're going to be. We've got a good case study here where this week the federal government has brought down this legislation to essentially freeze penalty rates and overtime rates in the law. So now no one can trade off a penalty rate. You see, you might, Damian, quite like working on a Saturday or a Sunday, and you might be in for doing some kind of deal with your boss on that basis. But now under the law, all those arrangements are essentially frozen. And so, the right to choose what kind of package might suit you and your boss is very limited. And
now, the labour movement will say to that, well, you've got to have minimum standards. If we don't have everybody agreeing to these certain condition rules or these certain minimum wages, that we're going to wind up with a gradual decline in the wage level. We're going to wind up with a gradual decline in these conditions and penalty rates and standards and everything. And it's the government's job to intervene and set the level playing field. What's the economics counter-argument to that position?
Well, that's just sort of wonky economics, because, that's basically saying that there's this huge surplus of workers from which bosses can choose, and they therefore can drive the price down, when in fact that is not the reality. And you wonder why in countries which don't have many restrictions, for example, in America, they have much higher real wages than we do. So I think it's a myth to think that those restrictions will guarantee good outcomes. And we've seen this in the last decade, where real wages have basically gone nowhere, notwithstanding all these restrictions. This is, I think, one of the myths of the interventionists, that they think that they can do what they regard as being in the public interest. It's the anointed elites can do what they think is a good thing, and that is what will be achieved. But in fact, the trouble is that market economics has a way of winning out.
The problem is, though, it's hard to sell market economics, isn't it? Because these arguments sound so good that the left put, when they say, oh, we've got to have these restrictions, we've got to protect these conditions, we've got to protect the collective power of the labour market. It does sound very convincing to people, and it's hard and people do tend to think that the boss has all the power, and sometimes in history it has been the case that there's been obviously exploitation. But we are not in that place right now in Australia by a long shot, right?
Well, I think the broader point, Damian, is that there are not enough voices for freedom. There are not enough voices for people making up their own mind about how they live their lives, how they transact themselves in terms of the consumer market, in terms of the labour market and the like. There's basically one size fits all in a lot of these areas, and the government basically is telling you that they know best, you're low information, and you need to be protected. Now, the trouble with that is, and we've mentioned this, is that in effect people will become dependent if they're made dependent, and they'll lose the quest for freedom. But when you think of the broad sweep of history, people have died for freedom.
Yeah. But I think the people who value freedom...
I feel that in Australia at the moment, what I'd call the voices of freedom are very thin on the ground.
Yes. And I ponder why that is. I mean, we've just gone through another election where I thought, as we spoke about before, we saw the premiers of Queensland and Victoria re-elected after the horrible handling and travesty on trampling on our freedoms. It seems that people value their safety and their security more than their freedom. And they also don't. With freedom comes responsibility. You've got to be an adult, right? And infantilizing the population is something that the left do very well. I think people want that mummy and daddy nanny state to take care of them. They'd rather just be looked after by the state. And I think the left understand that, and they play on it very well. We tend on the centre-right of politics to make the assumption that people want freedom, that it's obvious to us that you'd want to be free. But a lot of people, they'd rather have comfort than freedom, I think. Maybe we're in that place.
Well, I think it's a bit depressing in a way, because I think what happens is that, it's only when some sort of tipping point emerges. So in the case of the UK, the economy was absolutely on its knees, and out of that emerged a person called Maggie Thatcher, who was an extraordinary but exceptional person. But I mean, we did have Paul Keating, who talked about Australia being a banana republic, and that was also a turning point. I mean, people think of Paul Keating as just basically an economic reformer, but many of things he was doing was basically to improve freedoms and the right to choose across the board. And in that sense, he was very important. And that's why the Howard Costello government, they kind of continued that. But I'd have to say it's been downhill ever since.
Yeah, it certainly does seem as though we're going, in a very dangerous direction, and we've been moving that way. Now we have the most left-wing Labor government we've ever had. We've had since Whitlam, some would argue perhaps ever. But look, Judith, great to talk to you. Thanks so much. And I hope we can have you back on the show sometime to go a bit deeper on these things. But Judith Sloan, if you'd like to see Judith speaking, she will be speaking on Friday in Brisbane. If you're in the Brisbane area, you can click on the QR code on screen now and get a 10% discount by using the code TOS when you buy your tickets for the Australian Institute for Progress breakfast for Emancipation Day, which is August the 1st, and they're celebrating it on Friday this coming week. So Judith Sloan, thanks a lot for joining us on the other side.
Pleasure, Damian.
And that is all for this episode of The Other Side, your analysis of the best news and commentary without the woke. And we will see you next Friday night. Clips from this show will be dropping throughout the week as usual on our YouTube channel. If you like what we do, please support us. We are a voluntary viewer-supported show. There are now two ways that you can support us financially. One is to go to our website at othersidetv.com.au using the QR code that you see on the screen most of the time, and sign up to the exclusive side for less than $5 a month or more if you want to. The other way that you can help us now is that you can subscribe right on YouTube itself, if that's where you watch the show, by simply pressing the join button, which you'll find beside the subscribe button down below. It's that easy. Just click the join button and you can support us that way. So 2 ways to support the other side now if you'd like to, and we really do need your support so we can keep going and growing into 2026. I'm Damian Curry. Bye for now.
The Other Side with Damian Curry is Australia's best independent news commentary show, bringing you up to speed on the issues that matter most. Simply subscribe for free on YouTube by hitting the subscribe button and bell, so you'll be notified whenever we post anything. And to really stay in touch, check out our independent website at othersidetv.com.au. You can sign up for free there too, or join the exclusive side and help support our show for less than $5 a month.